Okay, welcome back, and we are going to go to the data editor right away and go to the units layer, and we're going to do some stuff with Zeratul just to sort of clean it up. After that, we'll be doing the camera triggers. So Zeratul here under the units layer, I just searched for him, units tab I mean. We're going to scroll down and remove his cloak because that is just annoying while you're trying to test stuff out. And the other thing we're going to do is remove his HP bar, so he doesn't have an HP bar sitting above his head like you do when you normally select a unit. So we'll go to his actor here, click on Zeratul actor, scroll down and find status bar flags and uncheck them all. So now he doesn't have any status bars above him. Oops. And let's save. And the other thing we're going to do here is remove all of the zoom levels on the camera so you can't accidentally mouse wheel out and screw up the camera like you could in those Warcraft 3 RPGs when you were zoomed in and then you'd wheel and then it would break. So I thank Blizzard for adding the fact that we can do this now. So cameras, switch to the cameras tab, click on default camera and find zoom levels plus, double click and just X them all out. And that's all we have to do so the camera's a bit nicer. And we'll save here, and now we're going to go into the trigger editor and we're going to make our camera triggers. So click on the trigger editor, wait for it to actually come up. So we're going to remove all of the melee stuff here, and then we're going to change this game initialization trigger to have the action of applying the camera. So first thing we're going to do is new action, camera, apply camera object. We're going to be applying value camera 001 for player 1 over 0 seconds. That's all we need to do there. And then we'll copy paste this action and then change it to be camera lock camera input. We're going to lock it for player 1. And last thing we're going to do is follow. So copy paste the action, go to camera again, and then we're going to follow unit group with camera. We're going to follow for player 1, click on last created units, change it to convert unit to unit group, and change triggering unit to be value Zeratul. And with the camera and clear current target. And then last thing after this is just new action, visibility, create revealer, and we're going to make the map all visible because you don't want fog of war in when you're doing third person, so function entire map. There we go, and that's all we have to do here. So now let's do the camera rotation. You remember in my demo when I would click and the camera would sort of rotate automatically. That's what I'm going to be using for this tutorial, but you could go back to my WoW tutorials and use my WoW system. The good thing about this tutorial is that everything I show you won't lag on Battle.net. So all the triggers, the way I manipulated the user interface, it should be completely functioning on Battle.net and without the stupid delay that you're sometimes subject to when you use mouse events or keyboard events. Well, it's not a stupid delay, but it's a delay that has to be there because of the nature of the game. But if you remember in my WoW tutorial, I used like the events of when you mouse down and stuff, and that just lags on Battle.net. But this won't, what I'm showing here. But obviously it's not as customized. It's sort of just an auto-following camera, which is still okay. But so let's make a new trigger, and let's call this camera rotation. And what we're going to do is whenever an order is issued to Zeratul, we know he's going to possibly be moving, so we'll just rotate the camera whenever he gets an order. And that's pretty efficient and not running all the time. So the event, we're going to make a new event of unit. Unit is issued order. Any unit is issued order with ability command, preset, any ability command. And then the condition, we're going to make a new condition, hit OK on comparison, click on the left bracket on owner of triggering unit, and then change it to be unit triggering unit. Trigger unit equals Zeratul. Perfect. So now we just make sure that the unit that's doing the order is Zeratul and only him. And the action we're going to do first is just a wait action. So general wait 0.15 real-time seconds. So we just wait a little bit because, for instance, if he's here and you click over here, there's going to be a delay in the time that he takes to face that direction. So we need to have a little bit of a delay on here because he's not actually facing it this way until about a couple milliseconds later. So we're going to wait 0.15 seconds, and then we're going to do another general repeat, and we're going to repeat an action 3 times. And the action we're going to be repeating, and I'll tell you why we're repeating it, is apply camera property. We're going to apply camera object rotation to be value function unit, facing angle of unit, change trigger unit to be value Zeratul, for player 1 over 2 seconds with existing velocity and 4% deceleration. And that's just numbers that I figured out were good. And then we're just going to do another action, general wait 0.3 real-time seconds. So let me explain this. This is the entire trigger. We wait a little bit just to make sure he starts facing the right angle, because he's going to be facing this way even when you click here for a few milliseconds longer until he finally turns all the way that way. So, trigger editor here. So we wait a little bit, and then we're going to repeat 3 times. We're going to make the camera face his facing, and then we're going to wait a little bit each time. So this will take about a second to execute, because it'll run once, wait 0.3, run second time, wait 0.3, and then run the third time. So the reason for that is that if you clicked here, he's going to take quite a bit of time to rotate himself fully. So by the time he actually gets here, you want to keep the camera rotating with him. Otherwise, if we only did this action once up here, it might only make it to halfway on his full rotation to face a different angle. So this is just sort of cleaning up the fact that he might be doing a full turn or stuff like that. And it works nicely, so that's all we need to know. So now after this, like I might have seen in my demo, is that I could use the mouse key, the arrow keys to change the pitch of the camera, the angle of attack or whatever. So let's make that trigger now. We're going to go new trigger, and this is going to be called camera pitch up trigger. And now this trigger would actually be succumb to the delay on BattleNet, but because it's not like a big deal, like, I mean, how often are you going to be changing the angle? Probably not. It's not like a game-breaking thing. So we made a new trigger, camera pitch up, and new event now is going to be UI key pressed, and any player presses change this to be the up key with all of these allowed, and they're actually going to have to press the up key up, not down. So any player presses the up key up. What we're going to do is new action, camera, apply camera property. This one's going to be, instead of distance, angle of attack, and the value is going to be a function math arithmetic real, and it's going to be, click on value 1, change it to function, camera pitch of player, current camera pitch of player 1 plus 10. And then for player 1, over 1.5 seconds I found was good, and 4% deceleration again. And that's pretty much all we got to do here. So copy paste this trigger and rename it to down, pitch down. And I don't know why I put the word trigger in there. I was going insane, it seems. Anyways, change the event for this one to be presses the down key, but still presses it up when that means when they release the key. And this time we're going to subtract 10. And that's all we're going to do different here. So we subtract 10, and let's go back in here and just place some Zerglings so that we have something to fight. Because I know I forgot to put Zerglings in my last tutorial, as per tradition, so I got to keep up on this, on my proper tutorial Zerglings. So I'm going to place some Zerglings for a hostile 15, and just kind of spread them out like you would in any RPG. Okay, that's good. And now we're going to get to the complicated part. So how am I going to explain this? If you play like Half-Life 2 or Counter-Strike or any sort of first-person shooter, when you're down in this view, there's a lot of stuff going on that makes your gameplay smooth, because of the fact that you can't really, like, while you might be on some map, you can't really look off into infinity with the computers that we have today. And there's stuff going on, like texture gets lower detail in the distance. There's a lot of things that those first-person shooter engines do that we don't have in StarCraft 2 because it is an RTS engine. And so you don't want to be able to see the infinity off to the end of your map when you're only down here. Most computers just won't be able to handle it, and people will hate your map and they'll be like, well, it lags too much. So a solution that people have been doing on SC2 Mapster is that they take the giant skyboxes that you would normally see in the sky if I zoom it out. Well, I agree, I actually might not have one, but most maps you'll see the blue sky if you zoom the far clip all the way out. And so what we're going to do is take that model. It's actually just a big like hemisphere, and we're going to shrink it down so that it's about the size of maybe this area around your hero. And then we're going to use fog to kind of blend out the edges, and that way that skybox will move around with you, making it look like you're in sort of a nice little foggy world. But the good news is that because the skybox will be about this big, we can set the far clip down so that it's something like this. Hold on, I'm mouse wheeling right now. There we go. So we can have it be something like this when you're down in the game here. We can have the far clip about here, but because of our little skybox bubble around our guy, it's going to look, you won't see this black wall, and it's going to look a lot nicer. So finally, now that I've explained it, and hopefully I've explained it well, we're going to go make a skybox model. So go to the data editor, switch to the models tab, and we're just going to right click, add model, because this is a fairly simple one, and we're just going to call this player skybox. And now what I don't have solved is how do you only show this for one player and have a different player see a different one. Right now this sort of map I'm showing you right now is only a one player map because this skybox thing will be around your hero, but I don't know how to hide it for other players, so if somebody else figures that out, let me know. I didn't really look too much into it since this is just a one player tutorial. But so anyways, we're making a new model here, name, and then click suggest, and then model type to generic, and we'll press OK. And so the only field that's really important here is the model field. So double click model, hit browse, and then we're going to search for Skybox. Oops. Come on, did I spell it right? Oh, I didn't spell it. Skybox, there we go. And we're going to look for Belshear Skybox. Here we go. It doesn't really turn up well here, but it will turn up well in-game. And scale, this is just numbers that I worked out before. 0.007. That's how big this skybox is, that you have to scale it down to that size. That's tiny, tiny, tiny size. And then we're going to go back and make a unit now. And the reason we're making a unit is because the unit has to move with your hero and follow him around. But the unit's going to have the big skybox model. And units are the only thing that can move. Doodads can't move, so that's why we have to make a unit. So what I'm going to do is just find the probe here, and I'm just going to use the probe as the base and just duplicate him. So search for probe in the units tab here, duplicate, and the only thing we need to check off is his actor, because we're going to strip him of like everything, his weapon, and yeah, basically all that. Okay, I've duplicated him, and let's change the name of him to be player skybox. Click suggest. Okay, and I'm going to rename his actor too to be player skybox. I wish we could set the name when we duplicate so everything auto renames. Okay, so let's go into his abilities here. Let's remove attack, keep stop and move, but remove everything else. Command card doesn't matter because it's not going to be owned by any player. Behavior response, no response. Default acquire level, none. Let's see, let's get rid of weapons here. What else do we want to do? So his acceleration I'm going to increase a little bit. No collisions, get rid of his collisions. Get rid of inner radius. Get rid of his radius and his separation radius. Make his speed to 5 so he can keep up, or always be able to keep up, I mean, with your hero. Let's see, what else do we want? We don't need any of this. Shield doesn't really matter. We want to change his height to be negative 1.5 because the skybox model needs to be pushed down into the ground a little bit, otherwise it looks kind of funky. And then in flags here, first thing we're going to remove is the turnable, because you don't want the skybox to turn while you're moving. You want it to always sort of look the same way, just move with you. So that's one thing I found that we have to do. Make it unselectable and untargetable. and not on the radar. Where is that? There it is. And invulnerable too. We don't want him to die. That would be pretty horrendous. And press OK. And now go into the actor and find art model, double click, and change it to be player Skybox, which should be somewhere nearby here above all these portraits. Player Skybox, there we go. And just copy paste that for these two other model fields too. And back in the Init Trigger, let's make, well, let me show you how it looks right now. So if I go in the terrain editor now and I place the probe, you'll be able to see what our Skybox actually looks like that follows our guy around. There it is, player Skybox. So now you can see, if I zoom out far enough, that's how big it's going to be. And the far clip of our camera should be just outside that. So when you're inside here, look, it looks like a sky, which is going to trick our player. However, because of this nasty, hold on, let me just get a hold of, let me get rid of that. Because of the nasty fact of, see the edge here, how it hits the world sort of harshly by the mountains up there. That's why we have to make the fog so that that part kind of fades out nicely. And unfortunately, it's going to make our sky a bit white, but that's sort of the best solution that I can come up with right now. And we might be able to find something better in the future if somebody posts a comment or something and does figure something out. But this worked good enough for me, considering we're in an RTS engine making a third-person game. I think it's pretty good. So let's go into triggers, and back in Melia initialization, after these lines, let's add a new line, new action, and we're going to go unit, create unit facing angle. We're going to create one, search for Skybox now, player Skybox, for player 0, so we can't control it, at point, function, unit, position of Zeratul. Wow, that's a lot of C's there. And we're going to make it facing 270 and option ignore placement, so it spawns right on him. And then the last thing we're going to do is order this unit to follow Zeratul around. So unit, new action, unit, issue order, last created unit to click on the left bracket of ability command, order targeting unit, change ability command to be move, targeting value Zeratul. So it's basically just whenever you have a unit and you click it to follow another unit, that's what we just simulated right here. And so one thing that I'm not going to show in this tutorial is that if your hero dies or something, you're going to have to, when the hero respawns, the Skybox is going to have to come back and be on and set to follow him again. So you're going to have to do this again and find a way to deal with it without the Skybox while he's dead, or find some way to do it. But in this case, I'm going to assume that you never die in this tutorial. And so we got this, but now we need to do the fog, like I said, and that'll be the last thing in part 2 here. So we go back to the data editor, switch to the terrain texture sets, and find Agria, since we're on, that's our map that we started out as. Yours might be different. And we're going to change the fog color here to be white, or pretty close to it, like right about there at the top. Okay, and then density, it's going to be 1, and that's a little too much, but you'll see it'll fix itself. Fog distance fall off for the fog distance far is 60, fog distance near 35, so now it's starting to look a little bit better, if you see. Fog enabled, fog fall off 0.11, and fog starting height -25. So there we go, it looks a bit better. The fog is a bit gray. You could go into data here, go into the lights editor, find Agria wherever it is here, and like I've shown in many tutorials, modify it, turn up the exposure maybe, and something like that. So now if I actually look, it looks a bit whiter, and there it kind of fades out. So the reason we have to make the Skybox on top of the fog is that with the far clip, as you can see, watch, I'll bring it in here, the far clip just will show like really ugly even behind the fog like that, and then you'll have a black sky. So with the fog and the sky and the moving skybox, it should be a white sky or light blue, hopefully, which is a bit nicer. And why don't I go ahead and show you how it looks at this point in game, and then we'll go to part 3. Okay, we can see my camera's on my guy, and if I click around, the camera follows him nicely. We can go attack here, and it does sort of feel like a cool third-person RPG. And the skybox is secretly moving with us. And if I use up and down arrow, you can kind of see in the distance. It's a bit white, but I don't know. That's the best I could figure out with this without making it too laggy. And it's only lagging right now because I'm running fraps over top of my entire screen, so that kind of lags it a bit. But it doesn't look bad, and it's actually pretty cool how you can make this sort of moving skybox simulate a sky and fog. And there hasn't been much talk. This is sort of there's some stuff on SC2 Mapster about it, but I wanted to finally put together a tutorial about how to actually do it from the ground up. So hopefully now that that exists, they'll see more third-person stuff. I know a lot of third-person maps that have sort of had troubles with the whole fact that you don't want the player to be able to see off into infinity, but you don't want to lag them. You don't want them to lag too bad either. So you got to find a good balance, and I think I found it pretty good here. So let's go to part 3.